I was able to discern that this was actually the public health milestone miracle that I was convinced it couldn't be. And at that point, this was a long time ago. At that point, people were still congratulating me for having quit. It was so new, and people embraced this much lesser evil. Because let's face it, we're talking about transitioning away from the deadliest consumer product ever conceived. And that's not an exaggeration. It is that big a deal, especially for someone who was smoking as much as I was at that point in your life where those packs of cigarettes per day really start taking days off your life. Statistically, after 35, I think it's something along the lines of, I don't know, you're every day that you continue smoking, every 4 days that I don't know, but let's just say that your mortality starts to take a dive significantly if you continue smoking past 35.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Vaping Unplugged podcast. Everything you need to know about vaping and tobacco harm reduction.
Hello, vapers of the world. Welcome to Vaping Unplugged Podcast, to your favorite podcast on vaping and tobacco harm reduction. I'm Amanda, your host and social media manager for World Vapers Alliance, and I have the honor and the pleasure to invite for a conversation today Phillip Kirschberg. Phillip is a tobacco harm reduction and vaping educator and a researcher and a scientist and a passionate vapor, just like all of us. So, Phillip, thank you so much for being with us today, and please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I am indeed Phillip Kirschberg, not a published researcher and scientist, but we have degrees, and well, we can skim it and understand it. And I'm a very passionate tobacco harm reduction advocate. Have been for, I would say, going on 15 years now. I became a vaping advocate because I was the heaviest smoker that most people ever knew in high school and in college. And throughout my career in real estate and commercial shopping center development, I was, I think, surrounded by people who smoke a lot. But more importantly, I was the person who graduated, did a master's program, and from there things, it was a stressful, everyone has a stressful, time in their occupation when they graduate from college, when you're just getting started. That's nothing new. But I think I was just that person who drank less, partied less, was, really getting it together. But every year, the number of cigarettes I smoked daily just kept going up because, dear Lord, I enjoyed it. So when I was, April 16th, 2010, my two of my best friends from college had been giving other friends of mine these glow sticks. They look like little glow sticks with a little button on them, and I thought to myself, what the hell is this? So I called my friend Wes up one day. I learned out that they are vaporizers. They're vaporized nicotine liquid, and I thought to myself, well, okay, tell me more. And I went into this extremely very cynical because, as I said, I smoked that much more than any person in my group of friends, and that's saying something. So I called Wes, my friend who had begun selling these products because, well, let's just say he was a pioneer, at least in the Southeast. I asked him, I said, do you think these, your glow sticks will help me, a person who smokes as much as me? And he said, damned if I know. And he meant it because he never even approached me about trying one because he's like, Kirschberg is entirely too far gone. But we met up the next day. He gave me something that looks a little bit like this, Ego tube, fillable tip, and a bottle of 24 milligram Boba's Bounty tobacco flavored e-liquid. Lo and behold, 14 months later, I wasn't smoking at all anymore. 14 months later, considering the relative scarcity of vaping supplies back in 2010, 2011, I would say that that is a feat that compelled me to start scouring the internet, everything I could find, looking for more information on the health benefits, risks, all the unknowns about what it is that enabled me, a person who was never going to quit smoking, quit. And what I found is a lot of good information from the UK, a lot of, there was not the, let's just say I had seen, I want to say the Popcorn Lung Association. I found that and immediately laughed and just moved on. It's amazing that that's still around. It's almost hilarious if it wasn't, just, I want to cry. Anyhow, I was able to discern that this was actually the public health milestone miracle that I was convinced it couldn't be. And at that point, this was a long time ago. At that point, people were still congratulating me for having quit. It was so new, and people embraced this much lesser evil. Because let's face it, we're talking about transitioning away from the deadliest consumer product ever conceived. And that's not an exaggeration. It is that big a deal, especially for someone who was smoking as much as I was at that point in your life where those packs of cigarettes per day really start taking days off your life. Statistically, after 35, I think it's something along the lines of, I don't know, you're every day that you continue smoking, every 4 days, I don't know, but let's just say that your mortality starts to take a dive significantly if you continue smoking past 35. And it wasn't premeditated or anything like that. It just happened to coincide with my friends finding these products, and they had no store, they had no nothing. He actually was, I think he was selling them out of a semi-lockable metal briefcase. So when I say that this was something miraculous to me, I mean it, truly. Granted, I had to buy some really horrible stuff from the UK, 36 milligram freebase, when I couldn't find any of my preferred e-liquid and have it imported from the UK to the United States and suffer through that. But I didn't need to smoke anymore. And I can't tell you it's a feeling like no other. People who have never had a very pronounced, passionate dependency that you were aware of is going to be the demise of you, and you're really not going to go out well either. It's just something that I didn't actually believe it could exist. So I'm here now because I feel like the world is still not yet taken note that these products are here, and there is a better way to keep people from dying the most excruciating deaths. And I believe that there are endless possibilities for friends, family, loved ones, people who no one talks about anymore, who really haven't been reached yet, people who are my age and older who are still smoking that who weren't lucky enough to just run into e-cigarettes and vaping technology. These people are still in the dark. And even worse, they think whatever it is, it's as bad as smoking. And I really just can't let that. I cannot abide, and that is why I do what I do. Because the idea that right now in a country like the United States, where we have so much to be thankful for, we have that many middle-aged and older adult smokers who just don't know that they can have everything that they enjoy in a cigarette and live better, longer lives. It's really something that I feel very committed to, and I hope that in the future I can continue doing this and get better and learn more from those around me. I've met some amazing people over the course of my years doing this, and I really am grateful for everything that I've learned along the way, and I'm very happy with some of the progress that I've seen over this long period of time. And I guess simultaneously, I am very much aware that we now have a running dialogue with policymakers in this country at the FDA. And I am, let's just say, I never find myself without a certain amount of surprise when it comes to what they do versus what they should do. And I think that it's important for people to take note of the fact that it wasn't that long ago where we had an FDA director for the Center for Tobacco Products who wouldn't give us a time of day. Scott Gottlieb, gave us a great deal of hope. Let me see. We could talk about Alex Azar. We could talk about all these people. The point is, we were never even in the conversation until relatively recently. So I think that's something that we should keep in mind, because that's a hopeful change for the better. Because for most of the years from 2012 to 2018, it was howling at state legislators and at state capitals, and we didn't really know what we should be howling or who to howl at. It was just a Wild West. Does kind of fit the description, I think. But I think we now have an opportunity collectively to speak to reasonable people, speak reason to scientists, policymakers about what these products can offer this country and those people who are so unbearably discounted, and that would be the most disadvantaged people who smoke. And it's untenable to think about it sometimes, because there are still hundreds of thousands of smokers in the United States. They just happen to be on the lower income, lower socioeconomic end of the spectrum, and they smoke, and therefore a lot of, I guess you could say, were influential tobacco, anti-tobacco, tobacco control personalities don't see those lives as valuable as lives. Important. Yeah, and it's. They don't matter. I really hope that we can change that. That is actually what I want to change, because it doesn't. You really don't have to be a former smoker or a former current smoker or anything like that to see that the way in which people who smoke are treated is just on a fundamental level extremely unreasonably. They're not really thought of. They are quite less than citizens of the country. They are unwanted, and in many ways it is a social justice and turning into a criminal justice issue, as I think my friend Jacob Greer has rightly pointed out many times. But there are so many things that we are poised to do in the future, and I hope that I can help keep those who want to make this point to those in positions of power within our government, listen, I want to help deliver that message in a way that is heard, and I hope to help do that. Still working on the message. I got a rough draft. Maybe soon.
The whole point is that vaping is a life-saving technology. And we have, people still say that we don't have enough evidence, but we have 20 years of evidence, scientific evidence, well-based evidence, good numbers, and alive testimonials just like you who had their life changed because of vaping. And they're the best tool for people who are reaching to quit smoking fast and effectively. So still seeing governments and powerful people saying that those technologies are compared to cigarettes this is absolutely absurd.
You know, something that has been on my mind quite a bit recently, the latest trend is that researchers, very prominent researchers, for example, the current president of the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco, is of the opinion that we should no longer compare electronic nicotine delivery systems. I hate that word, but there it is. We should no longer compare e-cigarettes to combustible tobacco cigarettes because that comparison is not relevant. Somehow I find, no, I disagree with that on every possible point. How is it that simply because you don't have that many kids smoking, and thank God for that. I really do think that we have got to stop ignoring the fact that kids aren't smoking anymore. When I was in high school, I think that maybe 18% of my senior class was smoking daily, and almost half of them were smoking currently every 30 days. This is monumental. I am not going to apologize for saying that this technology, these products, have saved a lot of young people from smoking for the rest of their lives and dying unnecessarily and needlessly. And as it turns out, vaping, per the latest numbers from the CDC, they're kind of phasing out. Kids are fickle, fad. I'm sure something something really not great for them will take their fancy soon enough, but the more cringe they see it, and trust me when I say it, I have kids who are in the, let's say, they find me unbearable. I am the epitome of cringe. Very much. So what I'm seeing is they also find vaping, juuling, love it. They find it to be just, ugh, no thank you. You look like an idiot. I'm like, thank God. This is what I had always aspired to look like, because I think vaping products should be functional. They should be effective. They should be as, let me see. They don't have to look like a USB stick. They should be small and pocketable. They should be large and, blow clouds, whatever. The point is, I'm pretty sure that the youth of this country, at least, has passed their, I want a Juul. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say, Juul, for all of their mistakes, they made a lot of them. They would have really benefited from having someone who was from the tobacco industry consulting on their product launch. But what I'm saying is those kids who were juuling, now you can't actually pay a kid to Juul. They're not smoking now, because if they were, we wouldn't have the lowest smoking rates in history. We do. So there's your gateway effect. Didn't happen. So all of these facts and figures point in the direction of harm reduction is working. Now, why don't we turn our thoughts to reaching adults who are still smoking, and because of many, many years of poor messaging, and a lot of it from various governments. They think that these products, which literally have, I don't know, 1,000. I think the lifetime cancer equivalence was something along the lines of anywhere from, I don't know, 200 to 5,000 times less than cigarettes, I guess the equivalent number. Let's just say that they're not any more likely to cause or give you cancer than not smoking or vaping. It's insignificant. No, I don't think people who don't smoke or vape should take up vaping. I think these products should be freely available to adults who want them. And I will not stop what I'm doing until I see that reality. And it's just that simple. I've tried to stop, it's just not happening.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
One of the principles of law, actually, is to have the laws of your country and the laws of your region 100% compatible to the reality of the people of that country or of that region. And nowadays in the US, we have the lowest smoking rates, just as you said. And young people vaping and smoking, it's actually not a thing. People think this is a epidemic, a youth epidemic, but it's not, since we're seeing the latest numbers, and we are seeing these numbers going down and down every year. So this argument that prohibiting the manufacture and sales of some kind of vaping products or some kind of e-juices or flavors to protect kids, I don't see how that could work for a society reaching out for tobacco harm reduction. We have to have these technologies available, legal, affordable for those in legal age searching to quit smoking, reaching out to quit smoking actively. And just, like putting new legislations and on those people and enforcing those abusive legislations. This is just not, it's not appropriate.
What it is a much maligned. We have a history in this country that is, it's no longer relevant, but it will remain relevant as long as people who were involved in the great big tobacco scandals, which really, in my mind, have no bearing on what's going on now, even less so considering that the hatred for big tobacco has clouded and obscured any amount of concern for people who smoke, let alone meeting them where they're at, quote unquote. There are those who are still just, for example, the World Health Organization and its Director General, every single time they bring up vaping, they bring up the trap of the tobacco industry. And they actually recently tweeted something, Dr. Tedros, I do not know how to pronounce his last name, but the General Director for the World Health Organization tweeted something along the lines of, thank you for banning vapes in Ireland and protecting children from the harms of vaping and tobacco industry traps. And I think I probably passed out for a moment when I read that, because it's one thing to yell big tobacco. It's entirely another to be the head of the largest public health organization in the world and not know that disposable vapes and the tobacco industry have absolutely nothing to do with each other. And tobacco industry traps, this is the kind of jargon that you would expect from a really mediocre activists. And I mean that. It's incredible that kind of messaging is apparently effective with some people. The tobacco industry traps.
And they're prohibiting vapes, but
no.
prohibiting cigarettes.
What I'm trying to say, if there is any category of vaping or subcategory of vaping product, disposables and the tobacco industry have not yet made. As far as I know, I think Reynolds makes a zero nicotine disposable. The tobacco industry doesn't make disposables in Ireland. So let's just say tobacco industry traps and disposable bans. Well, you're not actually making a whole lot of sense for those of us who've actually Googled a thing. And it's just amazing that a person in this position of influence can say such a ridiculous fabrication. It's just in order to sound, like he's doing something. It's preposterous. He could have said any number of things that it could have been at least half true, and I wouldn't have had a small blackout. But there you have it. So of course, I have to do what Jim McDonald terms Slack division and turn to Twitter and very, very carefully air my thoughts on this kind of messaging from the head of the largest public health organization in the world. You should probably take a moment and think about what it is you're saying, why you're saying it, and whether or not what you're saying is true, because this is unacceptable.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to laugh because I want to believe that these people are so tragically, ideologically resistant to new information that I want to speak to them. I want to speak to them with compassion. But when I see that just congratulating Ireland for taking away the things people are buying instead of cigarettes, and now the tobacco industry, now the tobacco industry will say, well, okay, well, thanks. See, this is just, it's the ultimate just, the terms like, conflict just upside down. The absurdity of it is, I can talk about this for days. My family wants me to go away for a long time because I have a tendency to just go off in this direction. So I'm going to stop now. But the point is that people like Dr. Ted and people like Dr. Kelly Henning, who is the lead public health doctor epidemiologist for Bloomberg Philanthropies, and she's just today, throwing posts out on Twitter that absolutely misrepresent the latest National Youth Tobacco Survey. She is actually, and this is a pattern. I mean, I'm not going to start reading you tweets, but thankfully, Ari Cohen, a very well-known First Amendment rights lawyer, and thankfully a friend to tobacco harm reduction, decided he was fed up with it and called her out. It's just, I think he said something along the lines of this is just brazenly misstating the latest numbers about youth vaping, instead of saying that it's gone from, I think, 7.8 to 5.9 current, I think. I'm not sure. Basically, I think we now have... Anyway, we have, excuse me. 30-day use. We now have 5.9% down from 7.7, which is a 23% decline. Okay?
Yes.
And then, of course, we have Dr. Kelly Henning, who is the Bloomberg Philanthropies Vital Strategies. She is a spokesperson, and really, she's very prone to error. I say that with a great deal of, that's as good as I can do for her. What Ari pointed out is that she says in her tweet, and I just want to point this out as an example that really should not be tolerated. She says, teen e-cigarette use has dropped below 8%, but daily vaping remains high, 29.7% of high school schoolers and 15.6% of middle school schoolers report daily use. That is absolutely false. The data does not show that. It's daily. Okay, so actually, you have daily use rate among those who reported vaping in the last 30 days is 7.8%, and for high school, and 3.5% for middle school. So that's actually 2.3% of high school students, and 0.5% of middle school students who are vaping daily, as opposed to what Dr. Kelly Henning wrote, which was 30% basically, and 15.6%. This is not subtle, is what I'm trying to tell you. And this is what's being put out there by those who they can't. I don't believe that these are people. You don't get to be in this position of influence and innocently make that kind of mistake. It's incredible. And what is happening is that the worst part about that message is it's not doing anything for kids. There are so few kids that are, no one is smoking, by the way, and I'm really just going to, bravo, well done. There are so few kids that are taking up vaping right now, like I said, because they think it's cringe. That what this messaging is doing is it's sending more messaging that vaping is bad to the people who need to hear the facts about tobacco harm reduction the most. People my age, people younger and older who are smoking and think vaping is just as bad because they've heard nothing but the worst kind of messaging. And that has to be counteracted sooner or later. And I'm still working on the best way to do that. I think that we are getting there. It's just those statistics, you don't get to be the head of Bloomberg Public Health and screw that up. You can argue intentionally or unintentionally. My feeling is when you do make the same mistake multiple times in different scenarios, I find it hard to dismiss that as innocent. Anyway,
I think the best way to fight against youth vaping is just endorsing the current legislation that we have. I mean, vaping is just allowed for people in legal age and adults. This is not targeting kids at all. This is not targeting teenagers at all. This is a technology for you to quit smoke if you want. And it's the most effective one. In fact, we have numbers, we have evidence that says that vaping is the most effective quitting smoking tool. But this is for adults. I mean, not even cigarettes are allowed for kids, but people do not talk about cigarettes being sold to kids. They talk about vaping. Why? I just can't.
I think this still. Excuse me. I think I'm probably a little bit loud here. This goes back a long time to a history that has zero to do with harm reduction for people who smoke. It has to do with a big tobacco lie and tobacco industry scandals, and this is nothing to do with what's happening at the tobacco industry. What the tobacco industry is guilty of in the past. Yes, sure, shameful, horrible things. But what we've seen, and let's just say the Tobacco Control Act, which is an entirely different conversation, which I'm not going to force you to have with me. We have people who are simply ideologically set in their notions of anything. If it looks, and I actually think the fact that vaping looks like smoke, let's just say that I think that probably factors into it more prominently than we think. The idea that nicotine on its own, the pleasure that one derives from using nicotine, I think that this has been stigmatized to death, and we now have a country in which we have very few kids, if at all, smoking cigarettes. We have the lowest vaping rates, and God knows those kids aren't smoking because, well, they found vaping first and they're not going on to smoking. I think there is other research that shows those kids who are vaping daily in high school have a tendency to lose interest somewhere in their early to mid 20s. I'm not sure which study that was, so please don't hold me to that. What's going on is we have changed those who should be very, very excited about the prospect of substituting a product with a fraction of the harm of the product that they spent their lives, trying to destroy, or the tobacco company, cigarettes. They should be very excited at the prospect of cigarettes, eventually being phased out. This is a product substitution. It's very simple. This is a very simple economic principle. You find a product that isn't going to kill you, that is equally satisfying to the consumer, and you have everything that you need. You have industry, public health, everyone's interests are aligned. So why isn't it working? Well, I would like to say that we are not without fault in this. I think some of the way in which there's a certain amount of cavalier that was present in advocacy and in vaping industry years ago that is, no longer present. But at the same time, it gave tobacco, very prominent tobacco control extremists involved, and now they are so intent upon keeping they have either intentionally or subconsciously switched from we need to tackle the epidemic of smoking-related death and disease to we need to tackle the epidemic of nicotine addiction, and to say even for a moment that these two things are similar is very, very hard for me to think about, because one, it's just vaping is not harmless. There are just too many people out there that say that. It's not harmless. Yes, you could say that we cannot know the long-term effects. What we can know is the long-term effects of smoking. We do have 20 years, and we have more evidence that essentially you can very, very accurately pinpoint what vaping isn't going to be causing in terms of, cancers. There are studies available that sort of, emulate, 30 and 40 years, and they're looking for harm, and they're trying to find it any which way they can. It's nonsense. But what I would like to say is this: we've seen a government that's become anti-smoking to anti-nicotine, but people who smoke are still there. They just, they're less people because they smoke. And in America, that shouldn't be happening. Hence, I'm very happy to be here today.
Oh, that's so good. We're happy to have you too. About the U.S. situation and the situation in Alabama, which is where you're based on. How is it? What do you think about it? Give me your thoughts.
Do you want? Shall we do the honest, blunt, straightforward truth, or shall I soften it a bit? Okay, so our once very, very effective state advocacy group, the Breathe Easier Alliance of Alabama, has disbanded. It's been run into the ground by a little bit of self-interest, and instead of harm reduction, it's been about my store, my need to diversify instead of staying unified and getting things done. So they disbanded. I'm not Nostradamus, but you don't need to be to have seen that coming, and I won't get into the particulars. We do have some extraordinary vape shop owners in this state, some amazing people who care about why they got into this in the first place. So I suppose you could say I'm at a crossroad where I am battling internally with the idea of getting involved now. But I'm just not sure that there's much we can do in Alabama right now. We were one of the first states to introduce a registry bill. And at the same time, we've always had the luxury. Alabama has always been a relatively vape-friendly state. There's not much about the rule of law in Alabama that makes sense. So I'll just say this. There are a couple of very, very loud members of our state legislature who are trying to ban everything that looks like a vape. And they're doing this on behalf of, well, two tobacco companies, Altria and Reynolds. And that is, and I think that this person who I'm talking about, who's in the Alabama State House, she's a representative, she, she's been, I think, pretty straight. She's been forthcoming with her knowledge that she's doing Reynolds' bidding. She is well aware, and she doesn't care. The last time I went down to offer testimony, the first things out of her mouth were, the reason I'm doing this, she says, the reason I'm doing this is because I've lost so many family members to cancer. And I think, once again, I had a petty mouth seizure and lost my mind. And I think Greg Conley was down there, so I'm sure you can ask him and he'll confirm it. So when I got up there, I said something along the lines of, listen, I'm terribly sorry for the good representative's loss and those people in her family that are no longer with us, but for the love of God, vaping doesn't cause cancer. So
please don't relate the two things.
Let's just say that I really wish I had been a little bit less rambunctious on that one. I could have probably done that better, but, well, I am who I am. But the fact that she said that was her opener, and I listened. And sometimes when you listen to people like that critically, well, you shouldn't do that, because you're going to hear some things that are just you're going to want to turn off. You'll pray for a coma, I guess. But there are things that can be said in these meetings. I encourage everyone who has the means to look at the calendar in your state of what bills are up. I know it's right now we have a lot of nothing going on, but when you have a state legislature in session, a lot of these things happened purposely in the dark, or just very quietly. This piece of legislation in Alabama is among them, but take a look at that, and if you're able, just show up to these hearings and give testimony and try and keep it short to the point, saying what you came to say. And my feeling is never changed. The best message is these products saved my life, and we don't want kids accessing them. We have seen a huge decline in youth use of these products. Please, it's important that these products remain available, accessible, and in a way that is not absurdly cumbersome, because the people that need them the most are older smokers that may have handicaps. They may not be able to travel, by a car. We're talking about, this is the sort of thing that really does upset me, is we have so many, aging seniors in this country who are still smoking, who have the perception that these products are just as bad. And even if they know that vaping is much safer and are vaping, well, there are a lot of states in which representatives are trying to make it even harder for them to access it. So my advice is to please speak respectfully, but don't ever miss an opportunity to speak in front of your state representatives when it comes to these issues, because you'd be surprised. Some of them will listen.
So that's why we have to raise our voices. And that's why World Vapers Alliance exists.
Yes, and I'd like to say thank you to every member of World Vapers Alliance for doing what you've done for quite a long time now. And I also want to say thank you to Michael for lying to you and saying that I'm someone worth having on the show. Very sweet of him. He
And
gets a
about
gift basket this year.
about the vape shop owners that you mentioned earlier, they're good people. So if they're good people, please tell them to join our ambassador program.
I will do that. Would you like to say a thing or two about the ambassador program?
Well, the ambassador program is a program that we have on WVA where we can join with your vape shop to not just be a vape shop itself, but a center of advocacy for harm reduction. So we can give you material. We can.
That was Brazilian for advocacy.
Yes. We can give you material on our campaigns and our programs. And you can benefit from the ambassador program to participate on trainings such as the WVA Academy. So it's really good for the whole community of tobacco harm reduction, activism, and advocacy, to the vape shop owners to be together with us. So that's why we encourage every vape shop owner who is a passionate activist, just as we are, to join this program. We are going to benefit, the community is going to benefit, and you, the vape shop owners, are going to benefit from this. So it's all good. No bad things at all.
No, we have a lot of very well-spoken, very knowledgeable advocates between, World Vapers Alliance, Consumer Choice Center. We have, there's, what am I thinking here? Obviously, the Reason Foundation. We have, and yes, CASA, American Vapor Manufacturers. There are people in each one of these each one of these organizations that I admire deeply. And there's something to be said. I don't often find myself in a position where I'm learning new things and really grateful to be learning new things. I have learned, and I can't really estimate how much I've learned from the people within these organizations, just by virtue of following them on Twitter and our exchanges online, which have been blessedly candid and open and extremely productive. And I think that it's made me a more mindful advocate. And I think that for someone like me to stop, look, listen to these people, let's just say that that speaks volumes about what they have to say.
Thank you so much, Phillip, for your time. Thank you for being with us today. And I think that's basically it. And we had a very insightful conversation. And conclusion, vaping does not cause cancer. Youth vaping epidemic does not exist. And if you want to quit smoking in an effective way, you should reach out to vaping. And I think that's the main message on the whole tobacco harm reduction advocacy world. Thank you so much. And I hope I can see you next time.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.